Hi, I'm Nargrim with Flaherty, and I'll be presenting to you my 5 applications that I developed for mobile web application development. So to describe our first app, which was the button interaction app, we had 4 buttons which when each were clicked they would trigger a custom toast message in a select part of the screen. Say top buttons would trigger at the top, centre button would trigger in the centre, and the bottom buttons would trigger at the bottom of the screen. And to briefly describe the back end of the application, we just needed to have 3 different ways of showing the toast message, each in different parts of the screen, as shown by the Y offset for the top and bottom, no offset for the center, which was when the image button was clicked, if-else statement for top left or top right button selected, else the bottom left and bottom right would be selected. They would both trigger either the top or the bottom toast message. And then the image button would handle it differently, as it didn't have any text in the actual button. Additionally, we had to use a separate layout file, which is our first time doing that, which is quite interesting to figure out how we incorporated that in the back end. The second app that we developed was the spinner radio app. I made mine look like a restaurant. Basically, if we used different spinner buttons, then as you can see, the menu down here would change. I decided to add extra functionality by making it like a food application, so we could submit what we wanted to order, which would show up on the bottom of the screen. If we keep ordering the same thing, then it will just add to the total, but we can add as many items as we like. We'll add some more. And then we can also clear the order too. And to briefly describe the back end, we had if-else statements, which would load different arrays of strings depending on which which radio button was entered to the spinner. At the bottom, we also have, it would check to see what the item was, and it was adding it to the order. If the item was already on the order, then it would only increment the total. If not, then it would actually add the item. This application was quite handy to learn how to do, because it was nice to see how different elements in the of an application can influence other parts of the application. I didn't find it too challenging, but I thought that I could have added maybe a little bit more functionality, maybe use more OOP so that this wasn't such a long piece of code at the bottom. The third app that I developed was the catalog app, which it required a scroll view in the home page, which would go left and right. I also added a snap to it to make sure that it would snap into place when you were moving the items. If we click on either the item or the button, it will take us to a vertical scroll view page, which will give us a little bit more information on each of the items. To give myself more of a challenge, I decided to use a recycler view. This basically, once implemented, would allow me to just enter items as lists into the main page scroll view. As you can see here, you have the image, the text that would go on the actual button, and the left and right arrow key, which would change depending on whereabouts in the list you were. This had to be done by using multiple classes, one that would basically set up and apply the recycler view to a layout, and then another one which would initialize getter setters for the actual items themselves. This proved really tricky. This is probably the hardest app that I had to do because I challenged myself with this, but I do believe that it was great to actually practice it, because I think it will become very vital in developing apps in the future that involve lots and lots of items. So for the fourth application, we had to develop a login screen which allowed the user to enter a username and password. The password would be hidden, and there's also character counters over here at the bottom. I just wanted to demonstrate what happens if we have less than 4 characters. It won't actually allow us to log in, and the login button will become locked. If we have let's say if we have the correct login details, we'll try and log in. Shows a welcome admin, you have logged in page. The admin was actually taken and passed over from the previous page to this page using get and put extra. Now just to show you what happens if we try and use the wrong credentials to log in, just put in a random password as well. If you try and log in 3 times, we'll try clear, just to show that it does actually clear the app, and we'll try and put some random details in again. If you try and log in one last time, the account will actually lock it again. You won't be able to use the app, making it now redundant, and a message comes up. So to give some idea of how the back end works on this app, we have if-else statements to check if the right credentials were entered. It would take us to the welcome page. Otherwise, the remaining attempts would be decremented, and once it reached 0, there'd be an if statement which would trigger, which would say account locked, please contact IT to unlock the account, and the login button would be disabled. Further to this, we had the add text change listeners for both the password and the username. These would just check to see when the text had changed using after text changed. Basically, we entered if else statements again to see if the username was less than 4 characters, then a message would come up and the login button would be disabled once again. This app was relatively easy to do, but I hadn't really thought about how the text change would actually work in an app before, so that was kind of challenging. I did, however, find it really useful to learn how to make a login screen and all of the little functionalities that go with it, as we will definitely need to use this in the future, as pretty much every application these days has a login section. So the final application that I'd like to show you is the calculator application. This one doesn't really need much describing from the user interface. It just does what you'd expect it to do, a regular calculator. Just to demonstrate though, if we try and enter a decimal button multiple times, then it will only do it once. I had little extra functionalities as well, such as the plus and minus to turn any number from a negative to a positive, and this does actually work, demonstrated here. Also percentage button, so let's say if you wanted to get 8% of 100 to make it easy, we'll get 8. And then to also just show that BODMAS does actually work on this calculator, we'll do 6 minus 2 times 2. So 6 minus 2 times 2 should be 6 minus 4, so that should equal 2. Let's see what answers. So we do get 2. That's basically all of the functionality from the front end, but the back end is sort of a bit more interesting. So just to show you the back end of the calculator, it basically operated off one big if-else statement, as all the buttons on click actually came to the num button. Once I clicked, the if-else statement just checked for what was clicked. One of the challenges was actually, I found when an operator was entered, was to make sure that the previous number entered before the operator was entered would still be shown on the screen, and then once a new number was entered, the screen would clear. This was done by Boolean. Basically, if an operator is entered, then the Boolean will switch to true, which was last character entered was an op. Then if you were to enter a number, then it would set it as false again, clear the screen and enter a number. That was quite tricky. Another interesting part of the application I found also was I used a while loop to do BODMAS. Basically, the first while loop would iterate through 2 arrays, one of numbers, one of operators. It would look through an operator that was either a division or a multiplication. It would then go through the number array, find the number that was at the same index as the multiplication or division, and then multiply that or divide it with the next number. It would get rid of the operator afterwards until it had done every single one of the multiplications or divisions, and then it would move on to the next while loop, which would do addition and subtraction. That would do the same thing with addition and subtraction until there was just one number left, which was the number that would be the total. I did find this app quite tricky. It was the first one that I did actually try and do, but it was also the application that I found fit most of the skills that I'd already learned in learning software development in previous years. I did find it really handy as well, because it sort of gives us a good idea of how we can still manipulate numbers in the way that we'd learnt before, but within the Android application. I think that we'll probably use this if we're setting up things like banking applications or anything along those lines, where we actually had to just use straight up logic to get results. Yeah, really handy app to learn, and still quite challenging. And to add to what I previously said, I'd like to say that I think I could have used OOP better, because looking back at this application, there is a lot of code that I think could probably be condensed quite a lot, just to make it easier if I wanted to add extra functionality, or if anybody else wanted to use the code, it might make it a little bit easier for them to figure out where they're at with the actual application itself. And just to conclude, I think that I could have used OOP a little bit more, just try and condense my code a little bit. I also think that I could have used the code from lectures a little bit more effectively, as looking back, things like the adapter for the recycler view, I could have really used an extra hand from using the code that had already been given for it. Overall though, I feel like I did a great job, managed to complete all the apps. I couldn't really find many bugs. The only one that I could really find was on the login app, where multiple lines of input could be entered. I did think that I put in extra functionality where I could, but that wasn't on every single app, as I was unsure where that would kind of cross the line between what I was specified and how it would actually add to the app. But I think that if I'd spent more time on the apps, then maybe I could have found those extra bits of functionality. But I do think that the apps that I did generate were good apps, and they represented what was really needed from the user, and maybe added a few extra little bits on to make the experience a little bit better. Thanks for watching.